The ultimatum. The signal came without warning on a Thursday afternoon. Scientists at the International Space Observation Center in Australia detected it first. A transmission so powerful, it overrode every satellite frequency humanity possessed. Within minutes, the message had been decoded and translated by technology far beyond human understanding. The world held its breath as the broadcast played across every screen on Earth. A figure materialized in the holographic displays, tall and elegant with skin that shimmered like polished copper. 4 eyes arranged symmetrically on its elongated head, observed humanity with an expression that seemed almost pitying. This was Coordinator Vex Thalan, primary representative of the Galaxy Council, an organization that governed over 60 civilized species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The coordinator's voice resonated with harmonics that suggested multiple beings speaking as one. People of Earth, we are the Galaxy Council. For 2 centuries, we have observed your species develop from primitive industrial civilization to spacefaring culture. You have reached the threshold where your actions can no longer be ignored. We come not as conquerors, but as guides to welcome you into galactic society. President Elena Vasquez watched from the Emergency Command Center deep beneath Washington. Around her, military advisors and scientific experts stood frozen, processing the enormity of the moment. First contact. The dream humanity had chased for generations had finally arrived. But the coordinator's next words turned that dream into a nightmare. However, your development concerns us greatly. Your species demonstrates alarming levels of aggression, territorial behavior, and resistance to authority. Your history reveals constant warfare, exploitation of your own kind, and destruction of your planetary environment. Such traits cannot be permitted to spread beyond your solar system. The hologram shifted, showing images of human conflicts throughout history, wars, weapons, destruction, all presented as evidence of humanity's unworthiness. Therefore, the Galaxy Council offers you integration under our guidance. You will dissolve your military forces. You will accept council administrators to oversee your governments. You will submit to psychological conditioning programs designed to eliminate your violent tendencies. In exchange, you will gain access to our technology, our knowledge, and the protection of galactic civilization. Coordinator Vex Thalan's 4 eyes seemed to look directly through the screen at every human watching. You have 30 Earth days to accept these terms. Our enforcement fleet currently surrounds your outer colonies on Mars and Europa. They will take no action if you choose wisdom, but refusal will force us to implement integration through less pleasant means. We do not wish to harm you, but we cannot allow a dangerous species to threaten galactic peace. The transmission ended, leaving only silence in its wake. For several long moments, nobody in the command center spoke. Then everyone spoke at once, voices rising in panic, anger, and disbelief. President Vasquez raised her hand, commanding silence through sheer force of will. Get me every world leader on secure channels. Get me our top military commanders. And someone find out exactly how many ships they have surrounding our colonies. She turned to her chief science advisor, Dr. Amara Okonkwo. Tell me we can fight them if we have to. Dr. Okonkwo's expression was grave. Madam President, their technology is at least 500 years ahead of ours. Maybe more. Their ships use propulsion systems we barely understand. Their weapons could likely destroy our cities from orbit before we could respond. In a direct military confrontation, we would lose within hours. That's not what I asked, Vasquez said quietly. I asked if we can fight them, not if we can win easily. General Marcus Stone, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, stepped forward. He was 62 years old, a veteran of 3 regional conflicts, and his eyes held the hard wisdom of a man who understood war's true cost. Madam President, with respect to Dr. Okonkwo's assessment, she's thinking conventionally. The question isn't whether we match their technology. The question is whether we're willing to fight dirty. Over the next 72 hours, Earth's leadership engaged in the most crucial negotiations in human history. They sent diplomatic envoys to the Council fleet, offering compromise, requesting dialogue, proposing alternatives to complete surrender. Every message received the same response: accept integration or face consequences. The Council was not interested in negotiation. They had done this 63 times before with other species. They knew the process. Resistance was temporary. Acceptance was inevitable. But the Council had never encountered a species quite like humanity. In a bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, Representatives from every nation gathered for an emergency summit. The debate raged for 18 hours. Some argued for acceptance, claiming survival was worth the price of freedom. Others demanded resistance, insisting that life under alien control was not life at all. Still others proposed deception, accept their terms while secretly maintaining hidden military capabilities. Dr. Okonkwo presented her findings to the assembly. I've analyzed their ships, their communications, everything we've observed. They operate on principles of absolute efficiency and logical hierarchy. Every action follows predetermined protocols. They've never encountered genuine chaos because their entire civilization is built on order. She paused, choosing her words carefully. That's their weakness. They can't conceive of an opponent who doesn't follow rules. General Stone took over the presentation. Every war humanity has ever fought taught us one lesson. You don't beat a superior enemy by matching their strengths. You exploit their weaknesses. These aliens think in terms of conventional warfare. Fleet movements, strategic positions, calculated exchanges of fire. They've been doing it the same way for thousands of years. He smiled grimly. We're going to show them something they've never seen before. The plan that emerged was audacious to the point of insanity. Earth would publicly appear to debate the Council's terms, buying time while secretly preparing for total war. Every military asset would be repositioned. Every industrial facility would be converted to weapons production. And most crucially, humanity would embrace the one advantage it possessed: unpredictability. Commander Sarah Chen, head of the Earth Defense Initiative, found herself leading a project she could barely believe was real. Her team consisted of military strategists, computer hackers, engineers, and even video game designers. Their mission was simple: find ways to fight an enemy with technology centuries beyond their own. We can't match their shields, their weapons, or their speed, she explained to her assembled team. But we don't need to. We need to be faster at adapting, more creative in our tactics, and willing to take risks they would never consider. She pulled up a holographic display showing the Council fleet, formation around Mars. They're positioned in perfect geometric patterns, beautiful, efficient, completely predictable. That's what we exploit. The team worked in shifts around the clock. Engineers retrofitted mining equipment into improvised weapons. Programmers developed viruses designed to attack alien computer systems by exploiting their very efficiency. The more organized a system, the more catastrophically it could fail if disrupted. Military planners developed tactics based on historical guerrilla warfare, adapted for space combat. Meanwhile, Earth's diplomatic corps continued to engage with the Council, asking questions, requesting clarifications, appearing to seriously consider integration. Coordinator Vexthalen grew increasingly impatient with humanity's delays, but the Council's own protocols required them to allow the full 30 days for deliberation. Rules were rules, after all. On Mars, the human colonists watched Council ships patrol their skies with growing anxiety. The colony housed 80,000 people, scientists, engineers, families who had made the Red Planet their home. They knew they were hostages, leverage the Council would use if Earth refused to surrender. Governor Lisa Park sent a message back to Earth that President Vasquez would never forget. Don't surrender because of us. If they want to threaten Mars to force Earth's submission, then Mars will show them what humanity does to bullies. We stand with Earth, whatever it takes. As the deadline approached, the Galaxy Council prepared for what they assumed would be humanity's inevitable acceptance. They had assembled integration teams, prepared psychological conditioning facilities, and selected administrators to oversee Earth's transition to a properly civilized species. Coordinator Vexthalen reviewed the preparations with satisfaction. Another successful integration, another dangerous species brought into the light of galactic civilization. On Earth, President Vasquez addressed her military commanders in a final briefing before the deadline expired. They think we're primitives who will either submit or be easily crushed. They've studied our history and concluded we're violent and chaotic. They're right about one thing. We are violent when we need to be. But they don't understand that our chaos isn't weakness. It's strength. It's creativity. It's the ability to adapt and overcome that's kept humanity alive for 200,000 years. She looked at each face in the room. General Stone, Commander Chen, Dr. Okonkwo, and dozens of others who would lead humanity's defense. When that deadline expires, we send them a message. Not with words, but with actions. We show them that Earth doesn't kneel. Not to anyone. Not ever. The final day arrived. Across Earth, people gathered in homes, in public squares, in shelters prepared for the worst. They watched their leaders, waited for the decision that would determine humanity's future. Some prayed, some wept. Some simply held their loved ones close and prepared for whatever came next. Coordinator Vex Thalan appeared one final time in a global broadcast. People of Earth, your deliberation period has concluded. The Galaxy Council requires your answer. Will you accept integration and join galactic civilization, or will you choose the path of suffering that leads only to inevitable submission? President Vasquez appeared on every screen, facing the alien coordinator with steady resolve. She thought of her daughter, serving on one of the defense platforms above Earth. She thought of the colonists on Mars and Europa. She thought of every human who had ever fought for freedom against impossible odds. Coordinator Vex Thalan, you asked for our answer. Here it is. Earth chooses freedom. Earth chooses to stand. And if you want to take that from us, you're going to learn what it really means to fight humanity. The deadline expired at midnight Greenwich Mean Time. The Galaxy Council fleet began moving into attack positions around Earth's outer defenses. Their formations were perfect. Their coordination flawless. They expected panic. Perhaps a desperate last-minute surrender. What they got was something else entirely. Something they had never encountered in 3,000 years of bringing order to the galaxy. They got war, real war, human war, and the universe would never be the same. Earth strikes back. The Galaxy Council fleet moved with practiced precision toward Earth's orbital defenses. 300 warships arranged in perfect formation, advancing at calculated speeds that allowed for optimal firing solutions. Each vessel hummed with power, shields at maximum, weapons charged and ready. On the command ship, Coordinator Vex Thalan observed the approaching planet with 4 eyes that registered no emotion. This would be a brief demonstration of force, nothing more. A few disabled satellites, perhaps one destroyed defense platform, and the humans would understand their futility. All ships maintain formation, he commanded through the neural network linking the entire fleet. Prepare to demonstrate superior firepower. Target their largest orbital station. We will disable it without casualties if possible. These humans must learn, not die. What Vex Thalan didn't know was that Earth had learned something crucial about the Council in those 30 days. They broadcast everything on open channels, their communications unencrypted because no one in the galaxy had ever tried to hack them. Their tactical formations were published in their own military manuals, available to any species that wished to study proper warfare. They operated with complete transparency, because deception was considered uncivilized. Humanity had built an entire strategy around exploiting that transparency. Commander Sarah, Chen watched from the command center buried 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains. Holographic displays showed every council ship, their positions updated in real time thanks to signals they helpfully broadcast. Around her, 300 technicians monitored systems that would have seemed incomprehensible to the aliens approaching Earth. They're entering the kill zone, her tactical officer reported. All assets ready on your command. Chen felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Everything depended on the next 5 minutes. If this failed, Earth would be defenseless, but if it succeeded, humanity would buy itself a chance. Just a chance, but sometimes that was enough. Execute Operation Wildfire, she said quietly. Show them chaos. The moon had been humanity's first expansion beyond Earth, home to mining operations and research facilities for over a century. The Council's scans had detected those facilities and dismissed them as primitive infrastructure. What their scans missed, hidden in shielded chambers deep beneath the lunar surface, were railguns, dozens of them. Not the elegant energy weapons the Council favored, but crude electromagnetic accelerators that used simple physics to hurl metal projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The guns fired simultaneously. Tungsten rods, each weighing 3 tons, accelerated through magnetic fields to 30% of light speed. No energy signature to detect, no heat bloom to track, just solid matter moving faster than the Council's sensors could register as a threat. The first impacts hit before the Council fleet even knew they were under attack. A destroyer named Peaceful Resolution simply ceased to exist, torn apart by kinetic energy that made nuclear weapons look gentle. 3 more ships followed in the next heartbeat, their shields designed to deflect energy weapons utterly useless against simple mass and velocity. Chaos erupted across the Council fleet. Ships broke formation, their perfect geometry dissolving into panic. Coordinator Vex Thalon stared at his displays, watching vessels disappear from the tactical network, unable to comprehend what was happening. Where were the missiles? Where were the energy weapons? How were they being destroyed by weapons their sensors couldn't even detect? All ships, evasive maneuvers, he broadcast, his voice losing its harmonious quality as genuine fear crept in. Locate the weapons platforms and return fire. But evasive maneuvers required coordination, and the Council ships were designed to operate as a unified network. When that network started fragmenting under stress, their carefully programmed responses began failing. Ships moved into each other's paths. Commanders waited for orders from the network that were no longer coming. Discipline, their greatest strength, became a liability when that discipline had no clear protocol for chaos. The second wave came from the asteroid belt. What appeared to be civilian mining vessels suddenly changed course, accelerating toward the Council fleet at speeds that should have torn them apart. These weren't warships. They were industrial craft with fusion drives pushed far beyond safety limits, piloted by miners who had spent their lives navigating the deadly spaces between tumbling rocks. Captain Rosa Martinez gripped her controls as her ship, the Prospector's Dream, screamed toward a Council cruiser. Her vessel was packed with refined metals and volatile chemicals, everything explosive from 3 months of mining operations. Behind her, 14 other ships followed identical suicide trajectories. This is for everyone who loves freedom, she screamed into her communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is for Earth. Her ship impacted the cruiser at full burn. The explosion registered on sensors across the solar system. The cruiser split in half, its elegant hull never designed to withstand such brutal, straightforward violence. Rosa Martinez died instantly, along with 93 Council crew members who had never imagined anyone would deliberately trade their life just to destroy an enemy ship. 14 more explosions followed. Not all found their targets. The Council ships were learning, adapting, shooting down the incoming vessels, but 7 made contact. 7 more ships destroyed by tactics the Council had never encountered, because sacrifice for tactical advantage was beyond their psychological understanding. While the fleet reeled from these attacks, Commander Chen initiated the third phase. Her team of hackers, programmers, and computer engineers had spent weeks analyzing captured Council communication protocols. What they discovered was both surprising and devastating. The aliens had essentially no cybersecurity. Their networks were organized for maximum efficiency, with no firewalls, no intrusion detection, and no concept of hostile code because no species in the Council had ever tried to attack them digitally. Marcus Webb, a 26-year-old programmer who had spent his teenage years breaking into corporate networks for fun, launched his masterpiece. The virus spread through the Council fleet network at the speed of thought, exploiting the very efficiency that made their system so powerful. Navigation computers suddenly displayed false positions. Targeting systems locked onto friendly ships. Communications filled with phantom orders and contradictory commands. Within 3 minutes, the Galaxy Council fleet descended into complete chaos. Ships fired on each other, believing they were shooting at human vessels. Others fled in random directions, their navigation systems convinced they were surrounded. Some simply stopped moving entirely, their computers overwhelmed by conflicting data and unable to resolve the errors. General Stone watched from Earth's surface as the tactical displays showed the Council formation disintegrating. "Launch fighters," he ordered. "All wings engage at will. Remember your training, fast, unpredictable, and never where they expect you." Earth's fighter craft were primitive by Council standards. Small single-pilot vessels with chemical rockets and simple projectile weapons. But they were piloted by humans who had grown up playing 3-dimensional combat simulators, who understood instinctively how to move in zero gravity, and who had been specifically trained to be as unpredictable as possible. They swarmed the Council ships like hornets attacking bears. Too small and numerous to target effectively, moving in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully chaotic, designed to be impossible to predict. They fired armor-piercing rounds at close range, targeting sensor arrays, communication dishes, and maneuvering thrusters. When their ammunition ran out, some pilots deliberately rammed their fighters into critical systems, trading their lives for maximum damage. Lieutenant James Park guided his fighter toward a Council battleship, his weapons empty, his fuel nearly depleted. He thought about his children back on Earth, about the world he wanted them to inherit. A world of freedom, not slavery dressed up as civilization. Earth remembers, he whispered, using the phrase that had become humanity's battle cry. Earth fights back. Earth never surrenders. His fighter struck the battleship's main sensor array at full speed. The explosion was small in the vastness of space, but it blinded the massive ship, leaving it vulnerable to follow-up attacks that tore it apart minutes later. The battle raged for 6 hours. Council ships tried to retreat, but human forces pursued them relentlessly. Small vessels launched from hidden positions throughout the solar system. Mining stations, research outposts, even converted civilian craft. Each attack was different, unpredictable, using tactics the Council had never seen and couldn't counter. On Mars, Governor Lisa Park watched Council ships fleeing past her colony. The vessels that were supposed to hold the colony hostage were now running for their lives, damaged and desperate. She broadcast a message that would be repeated across the galaxy. You came to threaten us. You came to take our freedom. Look at you now. Remember this. Humanity protects its own. When the survivors finally jumped to hyperspace, fleeing the solar system in disarray, they left behind 173 destroyed ships and over 20,000 casualties. The Galaxy Council had suffered its worst military defeat in recorded history. Earth's losses were also severe. Thousands dead, dozens of stations destroyed, entire fighter wings lost, but they had won. Against impossible odds with inferior technology, humanity had bloodied the nose of an empire that had never known defeat. In the command center, Commander Chen slumped in her chair, exhausted beyond words. Around her, technicians were crying, cheering, or simply staring in disbelief at what they had accomplished. General Stone placed a hand on her shoulder. You did it, he said quietly. You beat them. We hurt them, Chen corrected. They'll come back, angrier, better prepared. Let them come, Stone replied. They wanted to know what humans are capable of. Now they know. And every species in the galaxy is going to hear about this. He was right. News of Earth's victory spread across Council space like a shockwave. Species that had been integrated against their will, that had spent centuries under Council rule, suddenly saw something they thought impossible. Resistance that succeeded. Within days, rebellions began on a dozen worlds. Species that had accepted their place in the galactic order began questioning whether submission was really inevitable. On the Council homeworld, Coordinator Vexthalan delivered his report to the High Assembly. His voice was shaken, his 4 eyes unable to meet the gazes of the elder coordinators. They didn't fight like a civilized species. They used suicide attacks, computer viruses, and weapons without honor. They sacrificed themselves deliberately. They embraced chaos as a weapon. We had no protocols for such warfare because such warfare should not exist. The High Council listened in silence. Finally, the eldest among them spoke, her voice carrying millennia of accumulated wisdom. Then we have encountered something truly dangerous. Not a species that needs guidance, but a species that might teach us things we have forgotten. The question now is whether we try to crush them or whether we learn from them. Back on Earth, President Vasquez addressed humanity in a broadcast that would define her legacy. Today we prove something important. We prove that no matter how advanced, how powerful, how certain of their superiority an enemy might be, they can be beaten by courage, creativity, and the refusal to surrender. The Galaxy Council wanted to civilize us. Instead, they learned that humanity doesn't need civilization. We need freedom, and we'll fight for it against any odds, pay any price, and never, never kneel. The war was far from over. The Council would return with better strategies, greater numbers, and hard-won understanding of how humans fought. But Earth had won something more valuable than a single battle. They had won hope, for themselves and for every species in the galaxy that dreamed of freedom. The age of the Galaxy Council's unchallenged dominance was over. Humanity had seen to that, and the universe would never be the same again.